The Fantasticar is in Vintage, and it might be even stronger than I expected, but does it need to be restricted? All right, welcome back, Vintage Gamers, to a little short form video about the current state of Vintage with the introduction of the Fantasticar. I want to go over how I'm feeling about the car and how my feelings have changed over the course of this last week, and what my recommendation is to WotC for the next upcoming banner restricted announcement on Monday. So, in front of us here, we have all of the data that we have for MTGO since the Fantasticar has been printed, which is only 3 challenges. The 4th challenge, Sunday, did not fire due to there being a paper event in Japan. Sometimes that 3 a.m. challenge does not fire. But we have 3 challenges with Raker, and they have been somewhat different in terms of results. So let's go over them each individually here. We started off a 44-player challenge on Thursday, where 11 players played Raker, resulting in 25% of the field being Raker, and Raker having a 62.5% win rate, dominating the field of this event, with 5 decks into the top 8. In the next day, Friday night, was a challenge that I played. I played Raker Shops to a top 8, as well as many other pilots. There were 15 Raker Shops players in this 42-player event, and Raker Shops put up a 61% win rate, dominating the field with, again, 5 copies of Raker Shops in the top 8 and 6 decks with the Fantasticar in them. And then on Saturday, at the 1 p.m. challenge, which I was unable to play in, Raker Shops was the most played deck in the field again, 32.8% of the field, 18 players out of 55, only putting up a 47.5% win rate, which actually, in my opinion, is not that bad for a deck that comprises that much of the field. It's obviously going to trend towards 50% due to mirror matches, but having the most played deck be that, and that is actually more expected than results like this. So when you add those 3 together, you have these 3 challenges encompassing about 800 matches of Magic, which is very small, and we have 44 players encompassing 31% of the metagame playing Raker Shops with a 56.7% win rate and an estimated win rate without mirrors. So taking out the expected number of mirrors here, estimation, of course, a 60% win rate versus the field. So pretty damning numbers if these numbers continue for the long term. These numbers are well above anything that would have been restricted and dealt with in the past. Typically, the number we reference in WotC sheets is, WotC announcements is 55% win rate against the field, and the meta percentage is going to change depending on format to format, but 30% is a huge meta share for Vintage. As an example, Vintage before the Raker, before the Fantasticar was printed, was 9 different decks, all with 6% or more meta share, and spread across them. And all of those decks were between 47 and 52% win rate. So an extremely wide and extremely balanced field. So what do we know about what Raker has done to the format so far? Well, it burst on the scene and clearly showed results that this is the deck to beat, and people adjusted. We saw multiple decks from different very powerful wizards with adjustments. You can see a Montolio deck list for a top 4, where he played main deck Consigned to Memory, 4 main deck Spell Pierce, 3 main deck Mindbreak Trap, 2 main deck Null Rod, main deck Needle. So like the most cards you really can possibly play while still being hopefully generic enough to battle versus the field. In a secondary challenge, we saw a deck win the challenge, which was an extremely anti-meta deck here with Kataki's in the main. This deck forgoes Luris. It cut Luris to play Archon and Clarion Conqueror and Stony Silence. Well, these 2, Archon and Clarion Conqueror, are the cards you can't play with Luris. So this is like a Luris. This would be a Luris Frog deck, except it is cut Luris to play hate pieces for Fantasticar. So what you end up having for the most part, and this is just a generalization, is that you have Raker decks, and you have decks designed to beat Raker, and then you have decks that existed previously. And what I have found through personal experience is, for the most part, Raker decks are going to do extremely well into decks not designed to beat Raker plus the Fantasticar. But those decks that are not designed to beat Raker will beat all of the decks that are designed to beat Raker, because you are making, extreme extreme changes that will make your deck better against Raker, but worse at being like a generically powerful Magic deck. So I played a little paper event today where we had a couple players. We had some Raker players, and then we had an Esper Frog player, and then a Hermit Druid deck that was designed to beat Raker. And the Hermit Druid deck that was designed to beat Raker definitely did. It beat Raker, but it could never ever be a normal Esper Frog deck. And then the Esper Frog deck playing against Raker had a tough time versus Raker, but could still sometimes win with different ancestral draws. And I think that is generically where I'm standing on the deck right now. And so let's go over how I felt about the deck over the course of the week. When I started this week, I ran extremely hot and extremely win heavy. I placed 3 5-0s in my first 6 leagues and started off with an extremely high 80-something% win rate with the deck, was crushing it. As the week went on and more players got to play against the deck, and obviously as more mirrors started happening, I started losing a ton. And so I started off thinking the deck was extremely good, maybe Carnforge level, super broken. And then I started cooling off on the deck a little bit. And then on Friday, I played a Vintage Challenge. And that stream is a mess. It will go live tomorrow. And the only reason it'll go live tomorrow is because I promised YouTube viewers that they will get all of my streams, even ones I hate. And I hate the stream that I'm going to upload tomorrow. The reason I hate it is because I play embarrassingly bad. I play very poorly, not remotely close to the standards that I hold myself to. And then at no point am I ever really in a mental spot to play well. I am not unfocused and just tilting off, and it's a bad stream. It is a fun stream. It's an all-timer stream. But in my opinion, it's not a stream that I am very happy with as a player and a content creator, because it's not putting together the content that I would like to create. And I say all this because it didn't matter. I top-8'd that event anyways. I played very poorly, and the Raker deck was so strong that it simply didn't matter, and I still top-8'd. And that kind of readjusted my views again to the point where I'm not as high on the deck as I was when I first started, but I definitely am more impressed with it after that event. And my opinions over the week on what you should do about it have changed pretty drastically. In the beginning, I was worried that you might need to do something like restrict Monolith, Car, and Ring to even bring that deck down. Especially because, in my opinion, the next best deck in the format is actually Tony Jewel. And I don't believe that anymore. I have a different opinion now, and we'll talk about that exactly when I get into exactly what I'm going to recommend. But I do think that this experience of playing this deck in a large amount of leagues has given me a very interesting extra perspective and viewpoint on the format. One thing I ask everyone to do is play as many decks as you can, even if you don't like them. This is going to help you be a more well-rounded player and better at the deck you choose to put your most time in. Even if you are a dedicated player who only plays one deck, you are going to be better at that deck by having played some amount of Magic with every deck in the format. And something that this experience has given for me is let me reevaluate a couple cards that I think maybe I was not properly evaluating from a vintage holistic perspective. Here's a good example. The One Ring is a card that is not that good against most decks that I enjoy playing. I'm a big Tinker PO player, combo-oriented player, and in general, the One Ring doesn't matter a lot for those decks where you don't really care about protection. You can play through protection no matter what and still win because you're doing some kind of powerful combo thing. Having played a bunch of leagues with this Raker deck, the One Ring is so good against certain subsets of the vintage metagame whether that be the mirror or bazaar or aggro decks, the ring protection trigger is incredible. So I've gotten a new perspective on exactly how that affects more decks other than just my deck. And so that's why at one point I was thinking about, yeah, maybe we want to hit, the car, because it's so it is a powerful card. It is doing a broken thing. It is doing kind of an unfun thing and putting so much pressure on the opponent right away. But even now, I'm looking at the ring, like looping rings kind of invalidates the entirety of many other decks in the format. So I was like, maybe we don't actually want to have 4 rings. But that gets me to where I am now and what my recommendation is for Wizards on Monday on their first ban and restriction announcement. And my current recommendation for Vintage is no changes. And that might surprise you after all the data we put forward and here and my experiences. But I think it is the path that makes the most sense. A restriction right now, in my opinion, would be too early to get the best results. It would be kind of a knee-jerk reaction. I would like to see more data and see how the format transforms moving into the next banner restriction announcement, which is conveniently in the beginning of August. So that would give us a 1-month window to see the Raker deck with Fantasticar, how the format adapts to it, and if the format post Fantasticar needs fixing. And it will also give us time to figure out exactly the best way to do fixing if fixing is required. Like I said, I don't know. Like, you could just instantly restrict the car, and then you have another volatile restricted piece that appears in many combo-oriented decks. Because one thing that's happening right now is it's kind of still up in the air the exact best way to build the Fantasticar decks. The easiest thing to do and the thing that makes the most sense and has currently fared the best is putting it inside of Raker shops as a 4 of. But when it's restricted to 1 copy, I think the number of decks that will play Fantasticar is actually a lot higher. I think you'll see 1 in Sphere shops, 1 in Jewel, 1 in PO, 1 in Tinker, and 1 in all of these non-Lurrus decks. Giving these decks, a random oops I win that is not as consistent as the Raker shop deck. The Raker shop deck is by far the most consistent deck at triggering Fantasticar. And it kind of plays in a very different way than blue decks, where you are just basically jamming must counter threats every turn. And it very much stresses the current blue decks of the format to the point where you saw the Montolio list that, what you need to do to combat this is going to make your deck extremely weak against other decks in the format. And so I want to see if there's exactly how this deck gets built and exactly how the blue metagame adapts to this deck. One thing that I don't think can adapt, if this deck remains any kind of percentage of the significant percentage of the field, it's going to basically eliminate Dredge and Bazaar from the metagame. The 1 ring, in combination with the amount of pressure that this deck puts on, it is going to just push this Dredge deck out of the format, because that matchup is abysmal. It's something like 80%, and that's not an exaggeration. Like, it's very likely 80%. If I were to go to this matchup graph for the current data we have, and we actually have a decent amount of Dredge matchups, 25 Dredge matchups, we are 95% confident that the actual win percentage of Raker shops versus Dredge is somewhere between 70% and 96%, which would by far make it the most polarizing matchup in all of Vintage. So you're seeing already a collapsing of the metagame because of how polarized the matchups are becoming. And that, I think, is a long-term huge issue, where previously to the Fantasticar, we had a very wide metagame where maybe Dredge wasn't the best deck, but it was certainly a playable deck. There are going to be large swaths of the field that are eliminated from playability, in my opinion, by this deck existing at the power level it currently does. And so I think in the August announcement, there will likely be some kind of adaptation to this. If not tomorrow, we'll see exactly what Wizards chooses to do. But there will definitely be some kind of change before Eternal Weekend. But I think the 1-month period given to us by the ban and restricted announcement dates is a worthwhile time to make sure we're doing the right things and we're properly evaluating the situation. If you were to restrict a card on Monday to deal with the Fantasticar and the Raker Shops printing, it would be one of, if not the fastest restrictions of all time in Vintage. And I think you lose something for both Magic and the format if you do that. Broken formats in Magic are at their core memories and nostalgia and things that will be talked about for the rest of Magic's history. While you won't always look fondly back at these times, you will remember them and they will be talking points for years to come. And I think they are good things on a whole, as long as their resulting unhealthy metagames are dealt with in a reasonable time frame. And so a 1 month time frame of us making sure that the Fantasticar in Raker Shops is too good and restricting the right card to answer that, I think is a worthwhile amount of time to be spent doing it. What it also gains us is a positive and negative that the Oklahoma Land Run, which is a big paper vintage event, will give us good testing data at a larger scale than a challenge to see exactly how the metagame adapts and what occurs. This is, a positive and negative because it's a little unfortunate for maybe the players who are going to be at the Oklahoma Land Run if they are not interested in playing in this broken metagame. Me being one of the players who will be at the Land Run. And I think it's very reasonable for players who will be at a major event that they've planned for multiple months to not want to play inside of this broken metagame. And if they are asked, were to say, I think that for that reason that there should be a restriction on Monday, I think I would be pretty okay with that reasoning. However, this isn't like Modern or Standard. There are not 1,000-player events happening yet. And in this 1 month time frame, there is 1 or 2 paper events and just Magic Online challenges. So I think, as long as it's not interrupting and making a problem for Eternal Weekend, which is the major set of events at the end of the year in October, then it's worth it to get the job done right. So that is how I'm currently feeling. Like I said, I think the Raker Shops deck is the best thing you can be doing, but it is a beatable deck. By no means is this an unbeatable deck. The problem is when you have an extremely high power level deck, higher power level than the rest of the field, and you have a polarizing way you can beat it, you end up with most of the time, a 3-deck metagame or a 3-deck cluster metagame where you have the very powerful deck, the anti-very powerful deck, and the normal decks, and they rotate in that clockwise direction, eating each other. And what you end up with is an more polarized, less balanced, and less diverse format than what we had before, which was the most balanced and most diverse format in all of Magic the Gathering. So that is where I'm at right now. I think this deck is clearly extremely good, but I don't know exactly how broken it is yet. I want to see more data, and I want to make a restriction that makes the most sense. It doesn't feel like the Fantasticar is a great 4-of in many decks. It almost only feels like the Fantasticar is a great 4-of in one deck. And if that is the case, it might make more sense to maybe hit the enabler, Grim Monolith, that is making the Workshop deck that can play the Fantasticar so powerful. It might make more sense to hit the One Ring, which is a very polarizing matchup spread card that is contributing to this. Or it might make sense to hit multiple of these things. How many times are we going to need to restrict newly printed artifacts if the monolith still exists? Some non-vintage players will bring up the fact that all of this is because of Mishra's Workshop, and that is a true statement. But the vintage format is the Mishra's Workshop format. Wizards has stressed in the past that formats have identities and formats have pillars, and even though those pillars are broken or may be broken. That is what the format is about. In Legacy, you are in Legacy to play Brainstorm. And in Vintage, you are in Vintage to play with Bazaar of Baghdad and Mishra's Workshop. And then, of course, all of the blue cards. So that's not really a worthwhile discussion, in my opinion. So I'm going to end the video here. We've been yapping for too long as it is. That's where I currently stand on the Fantasticar and Raker shops. I am not going to be upset if Monday we hear about, okay, we're just restricting the Fantasticar. That would be fine with me. But I think currently the thing that would make me the most happy is probably a no changes call on Monday. Obviously, you're entitled to your own opinion, and you may leave it in the comments below. More vintage content on the YouTube channel every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'll see you then.